In January 2026, China's biggest chip factory changed a price. No announcement, just a number that dropped 40% without warning from $2,500 per wafer to $1,500. Half what Taiwan charges for the exact same product. That number didn't trend. It didn't make front pages. And that's exactly what makes it so important. Behind that single price cut sits one of the most consequential strategic moves in the global technology race, years in the making, involving hundreds of billions of dollars and reshaping who controls the chips running almost everything on Earth. This is how China gave TSMC a problem it never saw coming. Here's something the chip industry doesn't love to admit. Most of the chips in the world are boring. They're not the bleeding edge 3 nanometer processors inside your new MacBook. They're not the chips that train artificial intelligence. They're older, larger, cheaper, made on what engineers call mature nodes, 28 nanometers, 40, 65. They sit inside your car's brake system, your factory's motor controllers, the 5G tower 3 blocks away, every smart thermostat, every electric vehicle battery management unit, every industrial sensor, every device that makes modern civilization run without anyone noticing. The world's most important chips have never been in a keynote presentation. The global market for mature node chips, just the 22 to 40 nanometer range, was worth approximately $38 billion in 2026. That number is growing fast. Electric vehicles and artificial intelligence infrastructure are consuming mature node chips at a pace the industry didn't anticipate. Every electric vehicle uses dozens of power management chips made on these older processes. Every artificial intelligence server farm needs hundreds of them just to manage power delivery. This is the market China has decided to own. Not by building more advanced chips, by making these chips so cheap, so abundant, and so domestically controlled that the rest of the world runs out of alternatives. When SMIC, Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corporation, China's largest chip foundry, dropped its 28 nanometer wafer price from $2,500 to $1,500 in January 2026, the reaction in Taiwan was quiet and cold. Not panic, not yet, but the kind of very still attention that precedes real concern. UMC and Vanguard International Semiconductor, Taiwan's mature node foundries, saw analyst notes immediately. The message was simple. Chinese foundries, operating on cost structures their competitors cannot replicate, were prepared to undercut the market until they owned it. At $1,500, SMIC wasn't just cheaper, it was half the price of Taiwan. But here is the detail that makes this more interesting than a simple price war. SMIC wasn't doing this from a position of weakness. It posted record revenue of $9.3 billion in 2025, up 16% from the year before. Its factories were running at 93.5% utilization. Its rival Hua-Hong Semiconductor was running at over 100% utilization, meaning it was physically running its production lines beyond their designed capacity. These are not the economics of a company hemorrhaging customers. These are the economics of a company so flush with domestic demand that it can afford to price aggressively for international market share at the same time. SMIC could cut prices because its true cost of production is lower than its listed price suggests. Not because it's operating at a loss, because a significant portion of what would normally appear in that price has already been paid by the state before the wafer ever enters a customer's order. To understand the cost advantage China has built, you have to understand 3 separate forces that have been compounding quietly, relentlessly, for years. Individually, each one is notable. Together, they've created something the rest of the semiconductor industry has no equivalent for. The first force is state capital at a scale that distorts normal economics. Since 2014, China has deployed what it calls the Big Fund, a series of national semiconductor investment vehicles channeling money directly into foundries, equipment makers, material suppliers, and chip designers. Phase 1, $19 billion. Phase 2, $28 billion. Phase 3, launched in May 2024, $47.5 billion, roughly equal to the entire United States CHIPS Act. And the Big Fund is just the headline number. When you add local government funds, tax credits, direct grants, and state-directed low-interest loans, total Chinese state support for semiconductors over the past decade reaches approximately $142 billion, 3.6 times what the United States has committed. What that money does is absorb costs that competitors must recover through commercial pricing. When SMIC charges $1,500 for a wafer, a significant share of the capital investment that produced that wafer was funded by the state, not by SMIC's balance sheet. A competitor in Taiwan or the United States must recover every dollar of capital from its customers. SMIC does not. That is the core of the cost advantage, and it is not something any private company can replicate on its own. The second force is equipment localization, building the machine to make the machine. For years, Chinese chip factories depended on imported tools from the United States, Japan, Europe, and the Netherlands. United States export controls beginning in 2022 were designed to cut off this supply and cap what China could build. The result was the opposite of what was intended. It triggered the most aggressive domestic equipment build-out in history. Naura Technology Group's revenue grew from 6 billion yuan in 2020 to 27 billion yuan in just the first 3 quarters of 2025, nearly a 5-fold increase. AMEC grew more than 5 times from its 2020 base in the same period. Piotech's 2025 revenue was roughly 13 times what it was 5 years earlier. These are not incremental improvements. These are full-scale industrial transformations happening in a single country, driven by a combination of government mandate and suddenly urgent market need. By the end of 2025, China's use of domestically made semiconductor equipment hit 35%, surpassing its own 30% target a year early. In etching and cleaning tools, domestic adoption now exceeds 50 to 60%. In resist stripping, a critical process step, it's above 80%. In advanced packaging deposition tools, China has already overtaken Japan to become the world's second largest supplier. 3 Chinese equipment manufacturers ranked among the world's top 20 by sales volume for the first time ever in 2025. Then, in January 2026, Beijing made the mandate explicit. Any chipmaker seeking government approval to expand or build a factory was required to source at least half of new equipment from domestic suppliers. The third force is raw capacity expansion at a speed no competitor can match. Between 2023 and 2025, 97 new semiconductor fabs worldwide began operations. 57 of them, more than half, were inside China. More than half the new chip factories built for the entire planet over a 3-year period were built in one country. Each new factory spreads overhead across more wafers. More wafers means more process data. Better data means better yields. Better yields mean lower cost per working chip. The loop compounds with every quarter of production. This is the exact dynamic that made TSMC the dominant foundry on Earth, consistent early investment that compounded relentlessly until no competitor could catch up. China studied that dynamic and is now running the same loop at larger scale in a compressed time frame, with state financing absorbing the risk that private capital cannot. Now here's where the story becomes genuinely uncomfortable for TSMC and for everyone whose understanding of the chip race has been built around TSMC's dominance. TSMC is, by almost any honest reckoning, the most important industrial company on the planet right now. It manufactures roughly 90% of the world's most advanced chips. Every NVIDIA graphics processing unit powering the artificial intelligence boom, every Apple A-series processor, every AMD data center chip. TSMC's technology timeline is the technology timeline of the entire leading-edge chip industry. Nothing is close, but here's the trap. Artificial intelligence demand is so intense, and the economics of leading-edge chips so attractive, that TSMC has been shifting its attention and capacity toward its most advanced nodes. Rational behavior, from a pure business standpoint, a 3 nanometer wafer generates roughly 6 times the revenue of a 28 nanometer wafer. If you're optimizing for margin, you fill the most advanced lines first. The consequence is that mature node customers are being displaced. TSMC is raising prices 3 to 10% across advanced nodes in 2026 and planning to reduce some mature node capacity to focus on leading edge work. Its 2 nanometer capacity is fully booked through the end of 2026. Capital expenditure for 2026 is projected at a record $52 to $56 billion, almost all flowing toward advanced nodes and United States expansion. Companies who need 28 nanometer and 40 nanometer chips, power management integrated circuit designers, automotive chip makers, Internet of Things device builders are looking for alternatives. And SMIC's co-chief executive officer, Zhao Haijun, said in May 2026 exactly what those alternatives look like. Consumer electronics and Internet of Things. Customers are actively seeking capacity in mainland China because TSMC simply doesn't have room for them. TSMC's strategy is entirely rational for its own shareholders. Concentrate on the highest value work. Let lower margin, mature node business go where it must. Protect the leading edge monopoly that no one can challenge. But in doing so, it is creating a vacuum in the market for the chips that run the physical world, and China is filling that vacuum faster than any alternative competitor can respond. China held 34% of global mature node foundry capacity in 2026. Taiwan held 43%. According to TrendForce's projections, China will overtake Taiwan and become the world's dominant mature node producer by 2027. And by 2028, Semi-Data projects China's share of global capacity at 22 to 40 nanometer nodes will reach 42%, more than any other country by a significant margin. Every electric vehicle, every 5G tower, every industrial robot, every device that makes the modern world function without anyone noticing, the chips inside all of them are heading toward a single dominant source. Here is where the story requires honesty, because a narrative that only tells you what China is winning misses what it's still losing, and those losses matter. At the leading edge, China cannot yet compete. SMIC's most advanced confirmed production node is approximately 7 nanometer class, achieved through sophisticated multi-patterning of deep ultraviolet equipment. Reports suggest SMIC has reached 5 nanometer class production on its N+3 process, but commercial scale yields remain limited and contested by outside analysts. What is confirmed? SMIC's 5 nanometer class process costs 40 to 50% more than TSMC's equivalent. Yields per wafer are a fraction of what TSMC achieves. This ceiling is structural, not temporary. Without ASML's extreme ultraviolet lithography machines, SMIC cannot print the patterns needed for competitive production below 7 nanometers. China is reportedly testing a domestic extreme ultraviolet prototype, but a prototype is not a production tool. The gap between those two things is measured in years of engineering that cannot be compressed through investment alone. TSMC's overall position is not in danger. Every major artificial intelligence chipmaker is tied to TSMC's technology timeline through design decisions that take years to change. There are also real questions about sustainability. If China's state subsidies were reduced or redirected, how much of that $1,500 wafer price would have to rise? These are legitimate questions without clean answers. But here is what history suggests. Sustainability arguments about state-backed industrial strategy have a poor track record. Japan's chip industry was called unsustainably subsidized. Then it dominated global memory. South Korea was called a follower. Then Samsung and SK Hynix became the world's indispensable memory suppliers. The argument that subsidized cost advantages can't persist has been wrong before, at moments that shaped the next generation of the industry. Zoom out from the wafer prices and the equipment numbers, and here is what's visible at the level of global industrial strategy. The world organized its chip race around the leading edge. Whoever controls the most advanced transistor nodes controls the future. All of the export control policy, all of the CHIPS Act funding, all of the geopolitical attention has been aimed at that narrow band. 3 nanometers, 2 nanometers. Someday, 1. That framing isn't wrong. Leading-edge chips define the frontier of artificial intelligence and military technology. But it has an enormous blind spot. It assumes mature node chips are a solved problem, a commodity, a market that takes care of itself. That assumption is being proven wrong in real time. By 2027, China is projected to become the world's dominant producer of mature node chips, overtaking Taiwan. By 2028, it may hold 42% of global capacity at the nodes that power electric vehicles, 5G infrastructure, industrial automation, and the Internet of Things. Every device that makes the modern world function without anyone noticing, the chips inside all of it are heading toward a single source. This is a supply chain concentration that has strategic implications beyond market economics. It creates dependencies, it creates leverage, and it was built not by defeating the export controls designed to contain China's chip industry, but by routing entirely around them, competing in the part of the market those controls weren't designed to protect. Think about what that actually means for every company, every country, every supply chain that needs those chips over the next decade. A car manufacturer in Germany, a hospital in Brazil, a factory in Vietnam, a power grid in Southeast Asia. All of them buying chips in a market rapidly becoming concentrated in a single country, not because of coercion, but because the economics were engineered to make it the rational choice. Here is the honest summary. China was supposed to be stuck, locked out of advanced chips by export controls on the machines that print them, unable to compete with TSMC's technology. The strategy was to hold that line until China fell permanently behind. What happened instead? China found the part of the track nobody was guarding and ran it at full speed. Mature nodes, equipment localization, state capital absorbing costs that competitors must price in. A wafer price cut so aggressive it reset market expectations overnight. SMIC is not TSMC. It cannot make the chips that power the most advanced artificial intelligence. It cannot challenge the leading edge in any commercially meaningful way. Those facts are real, but SMIC controls and is rapidly expanding control over the capacity to make the chips that power everything else. And everything else is most of the world. The chip race everyone has been watching is still happening. TSMC is still winning it at the leading edge. But a different race, the one for the chips the physical world actually runs on, that race is being decided right now. It was never really a contest. A price cut is just a number, until it's a signal. And the signal China sent in January 2026 was simple. We have already done the work. The most important move in a technology race is rarely the one everyone is watching. It's the one being made in the part of the map everyone ignored. Here's the question I genuinely want your take on, and be honest because people disagree sharply on this one, is what China has built in mature node chips genuine competition that the rest of the world should meet on equal terms? Or is a cost structure built on state capital a fundamentally different kind of advantage? One that doesn't play by the same rules and shouldn't be treated as if it does? There are real arguments on both sides. Where do you land? Tell me in the comments. If you want to understand the technology moves that most of the world misses until they've already happened, subscribe to the channel and like the video. There's a lot more coming. Thanks for watching.